Chapter 29, 30, and 31 are the ending of the book. They were all very short chapters, so I'm only going to make one a video. First, in chapter 29, it is what all of the readers have been waiting for throughout the book. But before I ruin the spoiler, I'm going to tell you what happened first. First, Mr. Tate confirms that Bob Ewell is in fact dead. He's outside under the tree with a knife in his ribs. Then Mr. Tate asks Scout to tell them exactly what had happened that night, and of course she does, in her own words. Heck interrupts a couple of times to say that the holes in Scout's costume were likely from the knife, and the costume probably is what saved her life. Then Atticus said that he can't even imagine who would try to kill his kids, and says he can't believe anyone could be so low to do this. And Mr. Tate tells Atticus to sit down. He found a dress and parts of Scout's costume. Then he looks around and pauses, and Atticus asks, "What is it, Heck?" And he responds that Bob meant business. And Atticus asks who he thought did it. And it's clear that Atticus is in denial, and it's clear that Heck is implying that it was Bob Ewell that was after the kids. Mr. Tate finally has to say it a couple of times out loud before Atticus understands. He says that Bob Ewell did it, and it sinks in finally. Scout tells the rest of the story. Mr. Tate asks who was the one carrying Jim to the house, and Scout says, "Well, there he is, in the corner right there, Mr. Tate. He can tell you himself. You can ask him." And then after a minute, after she tells that story, it dawns on her that Boo Radley was there in Jim's room, and he was the one that saved them. And she says, "Hey, Boo," and finally gets to meet Arthur Boo Radley after all this time. In chapter 30, "This is Mr. Arthur, Scout," is what Atticus does. He introduces Scout and Arthur to each other. At first, Scout is a little hesitant, but Boo smiles, and Dr. Reynolds kicks everyone out of Jim's room. Then Atticus invites Heck onto the front porch to discuss the case. Scout invited Mr. Arthur to come along, and he nodded and smiles. Then Atticus and Heck start talking about the case. He starts talking about Jim and court, and Mr. Tate responds that won't be happening, it won't be necessary. Atticus clearly thinks that Jim killed Bob, but Heck Tate implies that it was Arthur Radley, and he saved Jim. Heck asks Mr. Finch if he can understand that Bob Ewell fell on his knife, and that he can prove it. Atticus says he cannot cover anything up for Jim, but he's still in denial at this time. That it was an accident, or that Boo Radley did it, and dragging Boo Radley into the limelight for a trial would be a sin, when all he did was save the kids from Bob Ewell. After a lot of protesting and Mr. Tate asking if he can understand, Atticus finally agrees when Scout says, "Well, it would be kind of like shooting a mockingbird, wouldn't it?" Atticus thanks Boo for saving his children. And in chapter 31 is the final chapter, and Scout offers to walk Boo Radley home. She talks to him and tries to see things from his perspective. And when she gets to his front porch, she remembers the memory throughout the years and sees everything through his eyes and starts retelling the story. Finally, she goes home and asks if Jim's awake, and he's not, so she sits on Atticus's lap while he reads Jim's The Gray Ghost. Scout falls asleep and wakes up when Atticus is putting her to sleep in her bed. She asks him about the story and says he was reading, but it had a parallel meaning. She argues that she was awake the entire time, and the book was out about Stoner's boy messing up, and how the whole town chased him and never would catch him because they didn't know what he looked like. But when they finally saw him, they realized that he never did any of that bad stuff or anything that they thought. And he was a really nice guy. And the book ends by Atticus saying, "Most people are nice, Scout, when you finally see them."